Hello. I want to talk about movies. You know, I like talking about those movies. They're those things that I have behind. Oh my god, they're behind me. Whew. Scared me. Anyway, we're going to talk about movies that have sequels, that have heroes that continue in those movies and aren't the main heroes. Is that the title of the video? Movies that have sequels, usually franchises to some degree, or happen to make enough money so they make sequels, and then they have a side character continue in those movies because the main character, usually the main actor, doesn't want to be in them anymore. They got bigger, better, brighter things to worry about. My main example here is actually the Prophecy trilogy, vaguely Final Destination, but yeah, that's kind of the two different differentialities, is it? So it's a minor character who was in, there's a guy called, I think he's, is he called Jonathan? So I watched the Prophecy trilogy. There's a poster up there. Not bad films. I enjoyed them. They're, 90s films. So I watched them. I noticed whilst watching the second one and the third one that the main characters from the second one and the third one are there but not there. Like, they're the same character but a different actor, and they're only there for one scene. The main character from the first film is in like one scene in the second film where he's definitely a different guy, very much so, different hairdo and everything, and dies. And at first I'm like, oh, there's just this guy who's a prophet who just knows this stuff, and Gabriel comes by and kills him. Okay, that's fine. Until, lo and behold, Joseph, played by Steve Hinter, he comes by and mentions to our main character in that film, oh, hey, so I had this mate, he was a priest, and then he became a detective, and then there's this weird shit that kind of happened, and then he spontaneously combusted. Don't know what happened there, but I was kind of curious about it. So he kind of explains to our main character what the kind of general gist is from his knowledge, like that there's some kind of angelic creatures that are hermaphroditic, who don't have, like, the same bone structures as humans, all these kind of like nitty-gritty little things, and that someone eventually comes by and just burns the body, and they just burn in the one spot, and then they just, like, talk crisp, like that. And he explains it, he's there for one scene, and then he's gone. And so that's enough for you as the audience to be like, oh, that guy from earlier in the film, that was the guy from the first movie. I did not realize that. I didn't realize that while I was watching it, and then he said it, and I was like, oh, that was that guy from the first movie. He actually became a prophet. Okay, good for him. I mean, it got him killed, but what does it matter? Obviously, this is one of those, oh, the main guy doesn't want to come back, and we got a better idea than the first film. Let's kill that guy off, at least to kind of connect the films. Of course, if he's the one who put Gabriel, basically sent him to hell, then Gabriel would want to take revenge. That makes sense. And then, of course, the third film, I guess spoilers for these movies, by the way. The main character from the first film, who becomes a mother, she dies at the start of the third film. It's a different actress. They show briefly how she dies, whatever. And then later in the film, we have oh wait, it's the same guy. It's Steve. Is it Steve? Is that his name? I've already forgot his goddamn name. It's Joseph. His real name is Steve. It's Joseph is his character. Joseph's back. Suddenly, his role has kind of been pumped up a little. He's now hanging out with, like, the main character who was the main character of the second film's son, is the main character of the third film, kind of. He's more of, like, the plot device than a character. He goes from A to Z, everyone follows him. It's more about everyone else than him. He's not a very interesting character for that reason. But we follow his girlfriend. And, of course, she's kind of the main character. And, of course, Steve's character tells her all this kind of stuff. And they kind of work through it together. He even gets a montage with, like, a musical number set to it where he's drinking and he's studying. And it's, like, the classic, like, oh, we need to convey to the audience what all this lore is within, like, a 2-minute period, maybe less. And I'm, like, thinking, who the fuck's watching The Prophecy 3 and expecting, like, and not having seen the previous two by this stage? Like, honestly, this will just be confusing and a mess. It'll be weird and stupid. I don't know. But anyway, you gotta make sure the audiences who are watching this direct-to-DVD movie are actually paying attention. So he gets his own montage, all that kind of stuff. Maybe they just use it to pad the runtime. I don't know. Who cares? I enjoyed it, because I'm like, hey, I like this guy. He's funny, he's interesting, and he actually gets a resolution because of it. He discovers all this stuff, he learns it all, and because of it, he's happy. He's like, okay, I've learned all I can know, I'm happy about about it. I hate that I know any of this stuff because it kind of sucks that this shit exists and I now know about it. But I know about it now, and I'm happy I put in the research. We're all good now, you know. He lets the main character's girlfriend know. It's all good, you know. The law's all been caught up. He figures out a key thing that's integral to the plot of this movie. It works out flawlessly. So I kind of wanted to talk about that kind of thing, how there are characters that are like that are basically just those. I mean, I kind of vaguely mentioned Tony Todd in The Final Destination, how he shows up between films, vaguely as the same character. He definitely is between the first and second film, to the point that the remaining character from the first film is like, I know a guy who will know this stuff, and they go to him, and it's the same guy, it's still Tony Todd, and he shows up as a voice in the third one twice, as like a voice of like a machine, and then a voice of a train, at the roller coaster thing, and as a train conductor, I think. He's not on screen at all in the movie. And then I think he's there in the fourth one. I can't remember what he does in the fourth one. Or maybe he's not in the fourth one. I'm pretty sure he is. Oh, there's 5 of them, isn't there? I don't remember what he does in the fourth one. I'm pretty sure he definitely shows up in the 5th one. And so that's that kind of thing, again, where you have one character who knows the lore, who's able to kind of run it down for the main characters, maybe add a little extra line to kind of like give a bit of a twist for this one, you know? So like in the second one, it's like, oh, the only way to defeat death is by giving you life. And they're like, oh, it's the pregnant woman. It's like, sure, whatever. He's totally not just screwing with you for the fun of it. But yeah, it's a fun little thing when you have characters like that, especially when these are movies that are like either direct to DVD or no one really cares that much about the sequel. Like the first one made enough money, because of it you can kind of make a sequel with the loose premise or maybe with the same character. It's usually just we have this premise, it's a good premise, the first one made money, we don't want to bring anyone from the first one back, and even if we do, they're going to get killed off pretty early on, but we need a character who can divulge this information. There are some of the characters in Friday the 13th. There's the guy in the first film, I think it was, who's like saying how the kids are all going to die because they're at Camp Blood.
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
It's the like Crazy Joe or whoever it is in the first film. Like that kind of guy who's there for like the first, second. I think he's in the third one as well. He definitely dies in at least the second or third one. He's kind of a different like degree of it, because it's not like he's there to actually explain to the characters, oh, see, Pamela Voorhees did this, and then Jason Voorhees, and he doesn't do that shit. He just goes around telling the kids that they're gonna die. What else do you need? Like, that's enough explanation. You've got other camp counselors around to say, like, oh, there is lore about this place, about a serial killer, but we don't really want to tell people about it, because otherwise kids will stop coming here and we won't get money. But they're not gonna do that, obviously. That's what the camp counselors are for. You can pad the runtime, make it seem like everyone's bonding and stuff, and it's actually just people telling ghost stories about Jason Voorhees and Pamela Voorhees and whatever. You know, the Crazy Joe guy just is there to tell them that they're gonna die, and then he gets killed. Yeah, it's usually slasher films, that kind of horror series where there's a character who's like that. I'm trying to think of other franchises that aren't carried by the same main character. I know there's a bunch of them. I think I've provided enough examples. I don't need to stretch my film knowledge that much of like, oh, who's that guy in that one movie that did that thing? I don't bloody know. The Chucky films kind of have it, but most of them is just the same main character or something. And it's the same main character for the first 3, but not for the 4th one. But then you got Chucky. It doesn't really count because it's a main character continuing in the sequels. It's different to having someone show up for 5 seconds and then to disappear. But still, it's a cute little gimmick that they do. I think it was pretty popular more in like the 80s and 90s. Minor League in the 2000s. Like, I haven't really seen it very often. You don't get a lot of sequels these days where the sequel is a same premise, different cast of characters. Because most of the time, especially like you think of slasher films, you get like Scream 5 and 6 and whatever, and it's the same premise, the same characters. How many of them are going to die this time? You know, like, it's just that kind of jam. They don't do anything else with it. There's never we're going to have a completely clean slate of characters. We're just going to have one character show up to actually explain the minor stuff. Or maybe they're just the villain. Like, I think the Urban Legends trilogy has that, where I think the villain from the first film shows up in the second film. I know that they show up again, but I don't know how big of a role they have is. But either way, that still doesn't really count. It's like Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael in Halloween. It doesn't count because they're a main character. You know, this has to be someone who's not around that often. I'm trying to think of a film that has like a sheriff who shows up. Like, think of the Batman films. Not exactly with Alfred, but like kind of like Commissioner Gordon or someone like that. But the 90s Batman, the 80s and 90s Batman films, like where there's no, they're minor characters, but they're there, but that's more of a world building thing. It's kind of annoying actually now that I think about it. Like even the Saw films don't really have that. They've got new characters in each film. They rely on continuing characters. You've got, John Kramer, you've got Amanda, you've got the detective who I always keep forgetting. Is it Hoffman? If I send this video there for Guy to edit, he'll be like, yeah, you know who the hell the detective is. You watch these movies. I'm bad with names, alright, I forget.
I call that epic bad luck.
But that's also one of those series where you've also got characters who will who aren't the same actor, who will just be like, oh, I heard about this on the news, the Jigsaw killings and stuff like that. So it doesn't seem like a very frequent thing where you have side characters like that pop up. Like in TV shows, you'll get that. You'll have that one character who will be one in you got a 80 episode series, they'll be in 13 episodes or something. They'll just pop up and back again. Not as a someone's kind of like a special guest thing kind of deal, but more of they're just maybe it's a detective show and they happen to be really good in this forensic crime unit thing, and they pop up to do this and whatever. There's not really many good ideas. Not many good variations, I'm thinking, because most of them are just characters who are just it's the main character's wife, or it's in Buffy where Angel's there for 3 seasons and he's in a different show and then he comes back and forth. It's it's not really the same thing, There's much more of a uniqueness in the movies where your lead star doesn't want to return, or narratively you have a better idea that doesn't involve the main character, because if it involved the main character, the journey would be about him or her or whatever and progressing their story. And it's that could be interesting, because again, a lot of sequels do that. What if Star Wars, the sequel to that, had nothing to do with Luke, and Empire was about some other guy, and then Luke showed up to give him some backstory about Darth Vader. Oh yeah, I fought him once. He knows the Force. Good luck. What if it was just that? Force Awakens does not do that. But imagine, actually kind of does, doesn't it, with Han Solo? Because he shows up, and then he dies. And then in the meantime, he gives the characters exposition about the lore of the universe. By the way, the Force is real. Nazis exist. Bye, I've been killed by my son. Yeah, kind of. That's the most movie example you can get out of the. That's a legacy sequel thing, but it still works, Legacy sequels kind of have that, where they'll have characters pop up who were from original films, be there for a couple of minutes, and then leave. I know, was it Linda Carter or whatever, who was Wonder Woman in the TV show, and she was in 1984, that movie. And she shows up for one scene in the mid-credits or something. That's a different thing. That's just a cameo. God damn it. But that type of idea, where you have a movie franchise or something, and you have a character from the original property show up for 5 seconds. But most of those are cameos. In this case, I'm trying to think 21 Jump Street's a cameo. God damn it, I need an idea of one that actually is a character popping up and being oh yeah, I've dealt with this before. Good luck. Here are some pointers. I don't know, maybe they did that in Ghostbusters Afterlife, but I'm pretty sure they just called the Ghostbusters and were hey, there are demons again, can you help us out? And they're oh, fucking alright. It's an interesting thing. It's a thing I wish that they would do more of. Especially in films that have sequels where it's the premise continues, but the characters don't. So the main characters don't come back. Maybe they're killed off in the first scene kind of deal, Halloween Resurrection style, whatever. And then they have someone else who happened to be there or knows what happens, but was on screen in the first film and shows up. The Scream films kind of do it, don't they? They have the guy, obviously in the first one, who's explains the meta breakdown of the horror tropes of the slasher film. And in the second one, he, iterates the slasher tropes of the sequel. And then he gets killed off. And then the third one, his sister comes by and she's oh, I have a tape of my brother conveniently explaining what the third in a trilogy is meant to do. what a way to bring back a dead character. But yeah, that kind of deal. But again, that's still just a main character, but in a small role because they died. Character who comes by, gives you wisdom and leaves. I don't know, the Gandalf situation. But Gandalf wasn't in anything prior unless you actually count the Hobbit films, which, I mean, they do count, but he was a main character. He had that story arc, remember, with the stuff? Remember when they predicted Sauron? Anyway, who cares? Look, this is a fun thing that they did in movies. They don't do it anymore. I don't see it anymore. I don't know what happened to it. I think franchises are so built on the fact that if we need to have the exact same characters come back for every single sequel and not do franchises where we have a film and the sequel is the same or similar premise with an adapted feel to it, a different changed approach and different characters, and one person just happens to come back to give the lore and then fucks off and dies. Or just like Jonathan, I can't remember his goddamn character name, Joseph. He just goes away. All these people, the people I've worked with at my workplace recently, and door my head in, they've all got the same names. Anyway, that's it. That's all I had an idea for this video. I don't know. Do you know any other ideas of this? What are good examples of it? I just like that the Prophecy Trilogy did that, and that they actually built on the character, and they actually gave him a resolution, because they're like, this is the end of the trilogy, he can be resolved now. He knows what he needs to know, he's happy, he can retire. He doesn't even get killed off. He just leaves. He just figures it out, tells the main character, and she bugs off to find a boyfriend. And he just goes back to his day job as a doctor dude, mortician, whatever it is. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next time. Adios.